Welcome to the August edition of the Verse Virtual Reading. Um, I didn't say this before I started the recording, but please put yourself on mute unless you're the first person reading, who is Michael, I believe. Um, I'll introduce our first reader as soon as I find the introduction. There we go. Michael Bazzett is the author of 5 collections of poetry, including The Echo Chamber from Milkweed and the forthcoming Morphologist, as well as a verse translation of the creation epic of the Maya, the Popol Vuh, probably murdered that,
No, you
named
did
by
okay,
the,
Bobby.
okay, named by the New York Times as one of the best poetry books of 2018. His translation of the selected poems of Humberto Acbal, If Today Were Tomorrow, was published by Milkweed in 2024. The recipient of an NEA fellowship in both poetry and translation, his writing has appeared in Plowshares, Threepenny Review, 32 Poems, the Poetry Review, the Paris Review, I'm sorry, the London Magazine, and the Sun. That's quite a collection there. Um, I'm happy to introduce Michael Bassett.
Thank you very much, Robbie. It's a pleasure to be here. Um, I'm going to read a few translations to start, from the new book that it's called If Today Were Tomorrow, the Milkweed book. And then I'm going to read a few poems from a little book of mine called The Temple. Um, Acabal is Quiche Maya. He's from Guatemala, and he writes sometimes in Quiche, sometimes in Spanish, and then translates himself almost always into Spanish if he writes in Quiche. So I was mostly working from Spanish. Um, and this is the first poem in the book. It's called Today. Today I woke up outside of me and went out to find myself. I traveled roads and paths until I found me, sitting on a mossy ledge at the foot of a cypress, chatting with the fog, and trying to forget what I could not. At my feet, leaves, nothing but leaves. I'll let you know that he has a lot of poems that are even shorter than that. He can pack a punch in very few words. This one's called, since he wrote these in Spanish and this one's so tiny, I'll read one. This one is called On the Floor, and I'm going to read it in Spanish first so we can just hear it in his translation, and then I'll read it in English. En el suelo, la luna busca algún agujero en las casas de adobes, entra y se sienta en el suelo. On the floor, the moon finds holes in adobe houses, then slips in to sit on the floor. This one's called Oración, prayer. In church, the only prayer you hear comes from the trees they turned into pews. Hojas, leaves. I like to hear the leaves singing green at sunrise, so tender, so fragrant. And the sad yellow silence of dying afternoons hurts. Branches break and fall, and for what? To become dirt. The moon on the water. She wasn't beautiful, but she hit me like the moon on the water. One thing I love about Akabal is he writes a fair amount about what it's like to write poetry. And of course, he didn't grow up in a world where that was really an option. Um, in fact, the Quiche Maya language doesn't have a word for poet. He calls himself a singer. Um, and he writes very beautifully about what it was like to, of course, always be working at other jobs and yet becoming maybe one of Guatemala, certainly Guatemala, in my humble opinion, Guatemala's greatest poet, one of the greatest men of letters. He won a Guggenheim. This is called Sin Remedio, Beyond Help. Since I couldn't learn something to become somebody, I hereby dedicate myself to presuming to be a writer, to kill time. Pastime of the crazy, trade of the hungry, they told me. Others run around, spending the day making do. I make poetry. What's poetry do? Who knows? I love that poem. Dos ojos, two eyes. The sky has two eyes, but can't look through both at once without one eclipsing the other. I took your name out of my head. I took your name out of my head and left it lost in the hills. The wind picked it up and made its way into the canyons. I began forgetting, when suddenly the wind struck the cliffs and the echo resounded. The rain began to sing, and your name came back to me, crying. Laurel, you were talking about the state of the world earlier, and I turned over the corner on this poem. Hay quienes esperar, those who wait. There are those who await the end of the world. Poor souls. They fail to notice it's been smashed to bit for quite some time. Sorry, I just dropped my bookmark. If you'll give me a second here, I need to. Las flores, flowers. Roots send flowers to tell us what earth is like on the inside. And flowers fade, they die, because out here, life is shit. He's got a great sense of humor. And I'll close, at least from this book, with the title poem, If Today Were Tomorrow. If I were a migratory bird, I'd take flight and look for other seas, other paths, other skies. I'm far away from me, yet no one's noticed the absence. I can't take myself anywhere without also coming along. If today were tomorrow, my eyes would hold a different light. So that's Umberto, who, yeah, he passed away sadly in 2019. But thankfully we've still got his words. And I'm going to read just a couple poems now from The Temple, which is a little book that was designed to kind of look like a stealth hymnal. I want to be able to, drop it right next to the Book of Common Prayer and have nobody notice it for a long time. It's called The Reasonably Good Shepherd. The reasonably good shepherd guards the stones scattered across the meadow. It's better this way, he said. I don't have to worry about them wandering. Wolves leave them alone. And from a distance, they still dot the field with white. But what do you do for wool, for milk, cheese? Oh, I milk them, he said. And the milk is thick and cures everything but loneliness. He stood to leave and seemed as surprised as we were. when his herd began to follow him with a sound like distant thunder. This is called Our Bodies. Maggie Smith chose this for the slowdown this spring, and it was really a treat to see what happens when a poem, reaches a different audience like that. Our bodies. We used to ditch them after school, dropping them in the lush grass that grew where the trestle bridge crossed the creek, and everything smelled of fish and tarred timber. Then we sank to the silty bottom of the stream and stared up through the rusty water for hours without worrying about breathing. And when trains rumbled overhead, raining gravel and cinders down into the creek, we did not blink. Afterward, we crept back to where our bodies lay tangled in the grass, still as two steamed fish on a plate. And we peered into our empty eyes, then climbed back into our skins and felt heavy at first and too thick. And sometimes you would even cry a little on the way home. And when I'd try to comfort you, you'd say, "No, it's okay. Sometimes it just hits me this way, living inside a body." The empty city. I went to the doctor and found out there's an empty city inside me. The streets are broad and mostly clean. Trees are few and far between. No cars are parked on the boulevards. Why has it been abandoned, this city? Who used to live here, and why did they rush off to the countryside? I admit I was distressed by the news. I had hoped for a mist-cloaked wilderness, or at least a ragged branch of crows. Instead, I wander silent apartments, the closets brim with winter clothes. Now I lie awake and wonder, what will they do when the winds of November come and bite through their thin summer dresses? This is called Tell Me Again. It's after Robert Bly. My old neighbor in Minneapolis I used to run into down at Quang in the corner booth, our favorite Vietnamese restaurant. Tell me again about the sound of wind in the pines, the cushioned duff, the needles that make, sorry, frog in my throat. I'm going to start again. Tell me again after Robert Bly. Tell me about the sound of wind in the pines, the cushioned duff, the needles that make a clean floor and bring a hush to the understory. Tell me how deer come here at night to curl into ovals, how they dream of windfall apples, a scent like wine, how when they dream of wolves, their hooves kick out like knives. I can see the tamped outlines of their beds, where they scuffle into needles that cling to them like fine red parentheses. Tell me how at nightfall I split in two and the other half of me comes here to these trunks where I lie among the deer and the sides of our bodies barely touch with every rising breath. This is called God, and it's for Ada Limon, another milkweed poet. God. Look, it's not that I believe in him, nor he in me. We've moved beyond all that. I just like having someone there in the dark. Usually we sit in silence, waiting for passing headlights to glide across the ceiling and knock stray prayers loose from where they got stuck on their way out so many years ago. It's almost like finding old piñata candy, says God, picking one from the floorboards. He unwraps it, takes a quick taste, winces, nods like he's just remembered something for the thousandth time. What is it? I asked. It's kind of like chewing tinfoil, he says. All that aching, naked hope.
Thank you, Michael. That was wonderful. And there's a lot in the chat that you want to look at. I put a link to what I think is your website so that people can get your book. And I remembered where I had heard you before. I ordered that book after I heard you read it.
Well, that's lovely. Thank you so much, Robbie. I'll mute myself now. Thanks for coming, everybody. It was my pleasure to share with you.
Okay, let me introduce our next feature. There it is. After working in academia, marketing, communications, and a distinguished career in journalism on the editorial board of the Star Tribune, James Lenfesty has published 18 volumes of poems, essays, anthologies, and a memoir. For 15 years, he chaired the Literary Witnesses Poetry Program in Minneapolis and led a summer poetry class on Mackinac Island, Michigan. In 2020, he received the K. Sexton Award for significant contributions and leadership in the Minnesota literary community. In November, Milkweed Editions published his 8th poetry collection, Time Remaining, Body Odes, Praise Songs, Oddities, Amazement. He serves on the boards of Red Dragonfly Press in Minnesota and the Hellbender Poetry Gathering in North Carolina. Take it away, James.
Unmute. How's that? Can you hear me now? Thanks. It's a great
A
delight to be
little
here.
louder, a little louder.
Okay. How's this? Is it better? It's great to be in the same room, so to speak, with Michael, who lives a few miles from me, and we never see each other. uh, and I love the Akbal and the Pool View and your own poems, which are really new to me. Just phenomenal that you're doing that work. So here's a little Chinese poem from 1200 years ago. The bird. Here we languish, a bunch of poor scholars. That's all of us. Here we languish, a bunch of poor scholars, ravaged by extremes of hunger and cold. Out of work, our only joy is poetry. Scribble, scribble, we wear out our brains. Who will read the works of such men and women? On that point, ladies and gentlemen, you can save your sighs. We could inscribe our poems on biscuits, and homeless dogs wouldn't deign to nibble. That's a 1,200-year-old poem from my pal Cold Mountain, translated by Burton Watson. And I always use it because it takes away all anxiety from being a writer of poetry. What's the point and what's not the point? Here I am reciting it by heart 1,200 years later. So, my latest book, Time Remaining, I'll do a few from this. Now, these, for 20 years, I copied that form, that Chinese form called the Sure form. Say everything you know in 8 lines, more or less. And I highly recommend it to everybody. It's just a phenomenal form to use in our joyful profession. But I also love Neruda's long Odes Elementales, the odes to simple things. And through my pal, Robert Bly, who translated many of them, as have others. And the interesting detail of them, they're long, narrow odes. They go all spill down the page, kind of like Angel Falls in Yosemite, bouncing off rocks and ferns and seeming to end with kind of an exhausted pen landing at the boulders below. Well, I attended a lecture. I'm on Mackinac Island, Michigan right now. I attended a lecture maybe 10 years ago by a guy who's a prominent collector of the Rudiania. Who knew him? But he was the nephew of a woman who owned a hotel here. He's from San Antonio, and one of the things he said to the audience, so You people have any idea how Neruda invented that form for those long odes? No, 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 nobody knew. He had a pal who owned a newspaper in Caracas. And the pal said, I'll publish anything you do, but it has to fit in the newspaper column. So that's how our Nobel Prize winning poet invented that form, which is such a delight. Well, I was entranced by what the guy said, and of course I've been entranced for years by the long form, which I had not used. Where I put the cork in, they take the cork, it takes the cork out. So the cork came out the next day because I had a terrible bike wreck and tore my ankle all to pieces. And so I was lying in bed, looking at my ankle up on the ice, and I wrote "Ode to the Ankle." And the body odes spilled out. But I'll give you Ode to the Ankle. First one of these long odes where I just let them go. I've seen you flayed on the doctor's chart, complex as a mountain range, fields of vetch and poppies between whitewater tendons streaming over boulders of mobile bones. It was when the accident freed two tendons from their prison, a life sentence, how they frolicked over the ankle bone like snakes making love, slithering back and forth, shameless in spring sunlight. Until now, I stood on you like an emperor, oblivious to the mob below the castle wall, the 10 toes and 26 bones, everything multiplied, all of it holding me relentlessly erect. Now, humbled by your rebellion, your angry stab of pain tearing you open to the world, swelling distant regions with soldiers living and dead, I stand lame and halt, wondering if the surgeon's guillotine awaits beyond the icy prison cell, the ragged stack under my lifted foot, the vicious boredom of the remaining family of the body. Oh, ankle, to think how long the emperor ignored your richness, your plenitude. But to love now not one, but two, a matched pair like emerald earrings dripping from the lobe of each pendulous calf. The calf I raised since a boy with admiration took to the state fair for judgment, to the football stadium, the swimming hole, exposed on moonlit summer nights, turned this way and that, as if they magically floated me off the earth. I'm thinking of those Shakespeare characters, where they'd show their calf to the ladies, um, as they magically floated me off the earth. While the holiest work was far below, silent where the silent where the ends of tendons and raw meat meet, the levers of the mass of all of me, springing me forward into the light. So when I wrote that, which is, you can see the images, the stories just leap down the page and you just let them go. Then I began to look around. Well, there's that part of the body. What else is going on here? And who's doing all the work here? Well, and I looked down and I saw my left hand. My left hand. Never mind the crushed knuckle, the one that held the nail for the hammer. Everything you do is bent, gnarled, upside down, devilish, illegal, like speeding, wrong and exhilarating. You think for yourself, backward from effect to cause. You scratch up on itches, down on dogs, stroke my beard like an absent friend, gesticulate with forkfuls of food, broccoli flying. Your fingers, lazy and forgetful, send me unzipped into the streets. How did you get so strange? Like an elemental particle is strange. This is for the physicists among you. How did you get so strange? Like an elemental particle is strange. A quark or boson flying everywhere and nowhere at once. Through walls said to be solid but transparent to your excitable turns. You feel the world as it really is. You feel the world as it really is. Bizarro, curious, inelegant, unclean, unfaithful, filled with delight. When you were young, you were restrained. Nose picker, marble flicker, ass wiper, you retired deep into your sleeve at night, speechless. Now you reveal your jaguar spots, far more alert than the rest of me, springing swiftly over the keys, ravenous for scattering prey. You come away gripping a hairy tail in your fist, offering to my ears the sound you were seeking, or a handful of feathers of the bird whose soul you needed to possess, the bloody carcass of a freakish longing only you relieve, enough red meat to spell me for a day, though I be tarred and feathers and run out of town by a mob of flaming right hands. Well, you can see these things just get going. And that's very different. And I love it to just let it go. So then you look down a little further, and what do you find? This thing, Ode to the Belly. Ben Jonson leads you into something like this because Ben Jonson said, "Hail, hail, plum paunch, oh, the founder of taste." And I say, Ode to the belly. So many want to lose you, drop you like an anvil into the sink, unwrap your Turkish towel covering a sublime Greco-Roman torso. Why is it, we wonder, you thicken with age like curd, like a floating bloated goat, like a sagging drum? Why does the tanned leather skin of the belt complain like some rusted rolling cable holding up an aging Brooklyn Bridge? My hands want to play you like a drum, a resonant bass, slap time like a subway musician's foot, its cavernous echo. Squatting, squatting, we are so much more Buddha than Jesus. Like bellies floating like lotus blossoms on a pond, surrounded by waves of leaves, riffled waters, trailing willows. We are supposed to be as resplendent as we are, open to sun and wind, entirely edible in multiple forms. My belly and yours, my belly holds a universe of other flora, whom I know, but whose names I have forgotten. Like my kindergarten class, all of whom are still with me, holding my hand. Lovers, dancers, laggards, the fattest, the smartest of them all. You are where the laugh lives, the laugh that shakes the whole of us, a quake revealing not underlying faults, but holy virtues, a ravenous capacity for cavernous joy. Well, then you start to look around a little more on this thing called your body, which Michael has certainly has looked into, and you find out that among the most interesting systems of the body is one we think about the least. Where are you? 24. Oh, sorry, 24. Um, integument, which is the system of your body we mostly know as skin. Integument. What a marvelous wrapper, snug even between toes. It shines in the sun and breathes like a forest as if the hairs were fir trees and the skin a swamp with roots below water, allowing the whole earth to live in its breathing. And when slashed with a knife, it glues itself back together, leaving only a nick or a road and a story. The story. Covering up every sin, every broken heart, every living love, every word unspoken, every song unwritten, every ugly thought. While perspiring the work of the hunt and the gather of roots and the digging of graves and the raising of shrines. Whose idea was it anyway to cover up this perfect covering, filled with functions and history and signals, a great plains of skin harboring thatches of fur like cottonwoods in the washes? And yet, we look down on the coverings of our fingers as we type poems and memos and screeds, which speak more about hangnails and headlines and lost loves, while the skin holds everything in everything in. Final barrier between the messy ooze of us and the sharp rocks of the world, which, if they breach, it heals. And then, of course, I know you're always puzzled as I am. I can completely see it in your faces that you're really puzzled. What is the difference between etymology and entomology? I know you're just, this has obsessed me for years, and I'm sure all of you. Well, fortunately, I have the answer. I have the answer right here on page 49. Uh, Ode to the Sound of N. And the epigraphs from Ralph Waldo Emerson, the smartest man America will ever see or hear. And the line, take this with you if nothing else for the day, if you don't have it already. Language is fossil poetry. Every sound I'm using, every sound all of us are using is hearing is a history, some of it 10,000 years old. Ode to the sound of N. Splice the sound of N into etymology with only a small discriminating pressure of the tongue at the intersection of the hard palate and the solid ceramic blocks of incisors, adding a soft, low growl in the wolf of the throat. And we veer away from the history of the constellations of words swirling like nebulae inside the dark linguistic universe of our mouths, where a comet tongue like a fiery eel carves distinctions from icy light. To change the direction of history into living bees swarming the tops of trees and butterflies. My God, butterflies, how did their impossible body plan arise? And ants, do not forget industrious ants who inspired tireless E.O. Edward O. Wilson as a boy to see in their persistent trails the intersection of all the living universe, how it tunnels together. And termites with their wizard enzymes, digestive paths harder to mimic than modern science once supposed. The massive meaning built into the small of it. These two clusters of linked sounds separated by a muscle, slickly pressed when called, to change the scale of the universe from lost to vast. World with an end. Join me. Amen. World with an end. And I have one other. So, since Pablo Neruda inspired this and inspires me in the world of attempted living, and in our crisis time now, but in all times, uh, I'll finish with a poem called "Reading Neruda Odes at Dawn." Again, remember, these are the poems where the governor is off. You just let it go down the page. Reading Neruda Odes at Dawn. I feel a kind of shame listening to this largeness, generous songs one after another, cascading down the page like recriminations that I did not see enough to praise. I did not shout loud enough for the miners, the workers. Though I did shout for the thickened earth, but in squares of daily journalist prose collapsing into the dump and ignited in small fires in the cabin, shredded newsprint whose dark headlines recede daily into the past like footfalls of marching soldiers back into the earth, igniting nothing in the human heart to unbreak the branch before heaven, the fertile branch of plum and cherry and orange. My God, how we have forsaken you for the corruption of impermanent ink, abandoned astonishment for the plow of extraction, tearing out your hair to rust the dawn with fire. Welcome to the Manitoba fires, everybody. I'm exhausted with reading Neruda's odes. His generous lips and belly, his radiant open palms pulling up his violent socks, shaking his salt, fingering the womanly curve of the spoon, the manly curve of the fork, the smooth neck of the carafe of wine. Nothing left to do but give and give again. Let me leave nothing on the plate of this life but crystals of salt. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You
I'm
said
rating.
something about sharing something. Did you want to share an image?
Uh, I
I
don't know.
misunderstood you on email.
I mean,
Okay.
a visual image, you mean?
Yeah.
No, I don't have that. No, just the
Okay.
no, just the book. This is, we're all mad for words. And as my friend Wang Ping says today, it happens to be on the back of the current poetry magazine. That's what poetry is: a wind, a leaf of grass that ties time and space together. I'll go with that. I'll hang with that.
Thank you, James. Thank you so much.
Sure.
We're going to move on now to our open mic, and we have a few folks in it. So, if you're not reading, please mute yourself. And our first open mic reader will be Laurel.
Thanks, Robbi. So I'll read a poem from my new book, from Sheila and a Gig Editions. And this one is called While She Blotted Her Lipstick. And it was written in a workshop with Eileen Cleary, who is a mentor of mine. While she blotted her lipstick. I wish my mother had been more precise, like the photos in her head of her mother and the brownstone, or had turned her pocketbook inside out on the mosaic coffee table. Ingredients like seafoam, murky, then clear. Or in a major key, she had praised my Telemon solo, but that would have broken me. On my own, I learned to scow through what could be had cheap, and in garrulous form ignored the absolute. But I could not pierce the cry of a gull as it threw its breast forward, or lunge of a scorpion. I wish she had ceased fire the missiles she couldn't resist, so I could rest my hand in hers before the stroke, not after. Thank you.
We usually allow two poems. If you want to read a second one, go ahead.
This is called After Hearing Mark Doty discuss his poem Brilliance. And this was on a lecture that he gave on sentiment and sentimentality. In my own story, I'm in a surgery waiting room with a man who would become my husband as we dead-eye the aquarium's girth, where one gray fish swooshes from end to end, and mollusks hide, and the tetras, far from their native home, flash thin blue-red lines. But the goldfish, almost invisible behind spiny plants, so we can barely detect its mouth blowing love pushes. And the man who would become my husband, he with early stage cancer, cannot compete with the goldfish as we readjust ourselves on metal framed chairs. And I have to tell you, hearing you discuss your friend's decision on whether or not to buy a goldfish, and how distance balances sentimentality, and how everything but the fish uses plain language, and furthermore, how the fish's overabundance steals the show. I didn't immediately consider the fish in my own story. Not just the big fish, back and forth, the mollusks, the tetras, but the bright, shiny wedding dress of a goldfish. Thank you. Thanks, Robbi.
Thank you, Laurel. Our next reader is Gary Grossman.
Okay,
Gary?
thank you. These are a couple of new poems. This is called The Present. We watered the neighbor's plants while he vacationed, and in appreciation, he gifted us a book on the local college mascot, a bulldog, though we're neither dog people nor college fans. A professor of Hobbes and Kant. I can't see him purchasing the book. Unlikely that. But the episode brought to mind regifting, a concept birthed like so many 21st century ethics by Seinfeld and company, where Elaine regifts a label maker to Tim the physician, who regifts it to Jerry, leading to what can only be an infinite regress. A single present passing from friend to friend in a chain of never-ending favors that aren't. Regifting is real. Eventually, stores, even Amazon, will feel the fate of dodos and dinosaurs because all that exists in this stardust universe is 17 presents swapping countries and continents, weddings and birthdays. As Seinfeld and his posse excuse every bad behavior with, well, isn't it the thought that counts? As the last present in the world continues to pass hand to hand, never to arrest nor arrive. This next one is called Aqueous Tampa. Each day around 3 in the afternoon, the sky opens like a split plastic bag, erasing compliment and complaint. Gray-black clouds arrive, an undertaker in a bad suit laying down the catalog of coffins, a family -1. But water washes all sins, baptism, ablution, immersion, even Pharaoh's mummification. Wants and needs evaporate, returning as calming dew. Water winnows need from want. But a sky sans moisture, what is that? High desert, unadorned by agency or good luck. A blue that bores, even as it strives. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Our next reader is Mary.
Okay, these are a couple of really short ones. This one's called Wonderful and Shining Things. I was raised on Mars, no oxygen, no grass or trees. We breathed iron and dined on rust. Maybe that explains some things. Ambitions best kept hidden like a lace slip beneath your Navy business suit. I wanted to grow up to be not a cat, but a cat burglar. Self-possessed, a singular survivor, stealing unnecessary treasures so cleverly no one would ever notice or know. Accumulating wonderful and shining things, memories of histories not my own, swag to carry safe behind a well-constructed mask. Never arrested, never suspect. While my words fall like cinders burning out, Crow preens his gleaming blue-black feathers and watches from the dead branch of a bare tree behind Publix parking lot. And this one is called Yesterday. Yesterday on my way home, I saw a crane standing in the grass between two houses. His gray, a column of solitude, between walls of aluminum siding, painted a discreet and unremarkable cream. He was so still, he was almost invisible. His red head the only exclamation in the overcast of another too hot day. The air so thick with heat, My lungs took it in with reluctance, and I wondered how he had the patience to stand so still while I couldn't wait to get inside the artificial climate that made breathing easy for me. His immobility was not rooted like mine, a heavy lock around the ankle, but a pause, a choice, a simple genuflection between earth and air. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Our next reader is Lavina. You still there, Lavina?
Yes. Hang on a minute. Okay, I am am I audible? Okay, I thought I would read a couple poems from Journal of that John Brandingham published in the Journal of Radical Wonder. This is from a collection that I possibly ill-conceived, taking first and last lines from collections of poems, scrambling them up, and then using the vocabulary to try and come up with a poem. So I'll tell you who I took the language from. And this one is called Plenty. And this came from first and last lines, William Carlos Williams selected poems. I took these randomly off my bookshelf. What roused and filled the air with hyacinthine flashes of light like music flung from anarchy to genius? Not straight, not suddenly or entire, unhurried with its green into a marsh of beauty, like a call, an instant plea. Never resting, sea to land, women to men, apple tree to conflagration, an alphabet written on wind, wings beating above snake and rose, sorrow and love, rain clearing the windows. And one more. It's called Turn. And this one, the words came from first and last lines, Heather McHugh's A World of Difference. Evening, the light about to begin tipping evergreens into impressionist gold. Only a ghost hold of the field and the black cat seeing what we cannot. Here is a boy in an acre of stars and planets, more space to fall through. One day he will see that echo invented always, that never has an anywhere to be, that things split away from themselves. What is a century? A word, fire and a box that crackles. Before we go away, brilliant last minutes like this, a feverish island of resistance. Thank you.
Good. Sorry. Thank you, Lavina. Our next reader is Gary Rosin. Sorry. Unmute yourself and say something, Gary.
Okay, I wasn't hearing you. My internet connection appears to be unstable, so all of a sudden stuff is not getting through. This first is called Days of the Dead. Years ago, your soulmate died, but your souls remain connected. The home you shared is full of recuerdos, all the things that remind you of the treasure of your life together. You see your faces, you hear the music and laughter, you dream again the dreams, you feel the intimacy. On Dia de los Muertos, you build an ofrenda, an altar and offerings to welcome your beloved home. You don't count birthdays, but Dias de los Muertos, each new ofrenda. Dias keep adding up. Soon, you will cross over, join the other half of your soul. Okay, am I getting through or?
Yes, you are. I was trying to retrieve something from another site.
Okay,
So,
never mind. I've done that too. The next poem is called Hope. And this is a failed rattle-ekphrastic poem, or that was not chosen in Rattle. Hope. You need not be a bird of myth to rise out of the fire, escape expectations, all the limitations that hold you down, thinking that you chose them to keep you safe. Take a breath, spread your wings, fly away like a dove, hope blooming in your eyes.
thank you. I'm sorry for looking absent. I was actually sitting in the chair right in front of you, but trying to get a link. All right, thank you very much, Gary. Our next reader is Marc Petrie.
Hi, sorry I was late.
It's okay, it's good to see you. We now don't hear you. You're muted, Mark.
I am.
Mark.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Sorry. I was involved in cleaning the kitchen for the wife. And that, of course, takes precedent over a lot of other things. So I looked at the time and I was late. I do apologize. This first poem is from a new collection I'm doing based on psychedelic poems and experiences between 1969 and 1974. And it's called Hi, What I Learned at Old SC. Fight on for old SC as we march on to victory. USC, Spring Scrimmage, 1973. Oh my fucking God, I'm high. So high, I ain't ever coming down. All the pain wiped clear, all the old fears drowned. I don't care if I can't find my way home. Aphrodite, risen from the sea, an ivory shell, her naked beauty, blonde hair into the blue, born anew. She talked to me. It's true. It's true. Give me another hit. Let me smile through the night. I just want to feel all right and forget how wrong is this night. My face a smile as wide as death. Exhale, no sound. Inhale, more marijuana breath. Forget I'm coming down. I ain't ever coming round again. All the chaos I can't amend. Amen. And this poem is called Pacific Currents. I have lived beside the Pacific long enough to hear its memory, each wave a whisper of what I once was, each tide pulling me farther from myself. The horizon, a knife, cutting the sky in half, sunlight spilled, mercury on restless water. Gulls dived, winged shadows, sliced foam. I remember weight carried, an unnamed grief. The ocean does not ask, does not forgive. It only returns again and again, its arms folded on the sand, its hands erasing footprints, I thought permanent. I walked these beaches with grief in my pockets, hope tucked between my ribs, listening for a voice to say, Here, you can let it go. The Pacific roars. I walked behind it, learning the slow art of giving myself to something larger, something infinite. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Our next to last reader is Jim Lewis, our inestimable editor of Verse Virtual
Thanks,
and my
Robbi.
co-host.
This first poem is a short one. I've done a number of poems on topics from the Old Testament, and for some reason, the Garden of Eden fascinates me. So this is called Outcasts. Well, said Eve, here we are. No more garden, no home, not even a tent for tonight. True, replied Adam, things don't look so good right now. But you must remember this. When the choice was clearly between you and Eden, I didn't hesitate. This first night as outcasts will simply be one of many that we will weather together. And then a second poem, Laurel will appreciate this. It's called The Specifics of Place. Where are you from? Asks each new friend who enters my circle, reflecting a desire to catalog, to put some frame of reference to my uniqueness, to our commonalities. And I always hesitate because to say I'm from California is not the whole story, not at all. I think I am in California, but I am from New Mexico. Just as I was in Utah, France, Ireland, Wales, Puerto Vallarta, Georgia, Nevada, and oh so many more places. Some for days, some for years, but none of them were home, none of them permanent enough to anchor me. I always knew that I would leave, maybe with joy, maybe with sorrow, but I would go. New Mexico, though, is my birthplace. My origin story was conceived there, enhanced by each stop along the path to where I have put down roots deep enough that logically I could, if I wanted to, claim that this is where I am from, and who would argue? Still, a feeling quietly lingers, telling me that I am a stranger in a strange place, that red rocks and sage, blue skies and green chilies are in my genes. No matter how long I am in California, I will always be from New Mexico.
Oh, I know the feeling, Jim. I'm the last reader, and then I'll turn off the recording and we can chat, ask questions, or do whatever if we want. So, hearing that, Jim L., that you were at Hellbenders, or you're part of Hellbenders, I have a couple of them actually of environmental poems, and I have a poem in the upcoming The Nature of Our Time anthology. So I might read that one. Find it for you. Hot. Yesterday, large birds, vultures and golden eagles, fell out of the sky in Arizona, stricken down by heat. I once held an eagle owl, light on my arm, despite its impressive size. With all that armature alone, curved talons, beak like a scimitar, it should have weighed my arm down like a stone, and yet it didn't, barely enough to bow branch. Hollow feathers buoy the birds in flight, insulate in winter and in summer, shield the body, pink and diminished underneath all that striated plumage. Yet this architecture didn't help. What had been light fell like a sodden sandbag to the ground, breaking windshields. Think of the canaries miners used to carry caged into the dark. They tell us what's to come, but we know already from experience where hillsides dry to brittle brown, flames will rise like spirits, making their own weather, taking down the tallest trees. Frowning at the cloudless sky, we vow to change, and yet our lives continue as they always have. Morning shower, feeding the cat, checking the latest news. Imminent disaster cannot blunt the appetite or quell the thirst, keep the ants from finding the ripest peaches in the bowl. Routine won't help us when the very air ignites, when birds, the messengers that go before us, fall from the sky. I can read another. Is that okay with you guys? Or that one was kind of long? Okay. This one is a very different sort of poem. Oh, what happened to it? It went away. There it is. Automat. And this is going to be in an anthology of popular culture sometime this winter. And it's called Ode to the Automat. After a long day of shopping downtown, laden down with bags full of our purchases, Mom and I would eat lunch at the Automat on Chestnut. We were tired, hungry, but food wasn't the attraction. They served the sort of fare you'd find now in the freezer section of the supermarket. Overly thick chowder, packets of crackers on the side, pickled tongue on wilted Kaiser roll, limp pickle spear, wedges of Jell-O pie studded with bright squares of cherry, orange, lemon, the kind you'd see in stained glass windows. Mom preferred white tablecloths and genteel waitresses, but sometimes at the tail end of the month, cash fell short. At the Automat, ordinary folk could enjoy the finer things, like marble tabletops, at a price they could afford. I would spread the linen napkin on my lap, savoring the heft and depth of the silver soup spoon between my fingers. But the real charm was the way you'd help yourself to food stashed behind a clear, steamy window, not much bigger than a post office box. You only had to drop your quarters in the slot and slip the plate onto your tray. The food appeared as if from nowhere, although from time to time I'd catch a glimpse of that other world behind the wall when a phantom hand, bit of white apron, would fill a vacant spot with another plate or bowl. I loved to turn a silver spout to make the steaming water gush into a mug. A dime could buy anyone a cup of tea or coffee and an hour out of the cold. Thank you. Should have reversed the order of those two. I'm going to turn off the recording now.